Jeremy mentioned that whilst a lot of this inquiry is still being shaped and we're kind of feeling our way, hopefully with you, as to kind of how it will look, there are elements of it that we know we definitely want to be vocal over the next year. And a big part of it will be around the kind of approaches that we're experimenting with. And there are two in particular that we know, whilst there may be others, there's two in particular we know we want to focus on over the next year. One of which I'll introduce, and then I'll ask Susie just to say a little bit about Signal, about the other one. So storytelling, I feel like I've said a little bit about it already. Some of you know lots about it, and some of it are kind of maybe weren't part of that group and so are less familiar, but just kind of very briefly, it's kind of an evaluation approach that kind of in essence involves collecting stories from people about their experience of something that we're interested in learning about, and then bringing those stories together to help us learn, and bringing people together to discuss those stories and what we can learn from them. And it's an approach that we've been using at the old fire station for about kind of 5 years now. And over the past 2 years, we've been kind of using it more and more in collaboration with partners across the city. And we've been amazed by the breadth of partners that have, shown an interest in using storytelling. And we've now trained close to kind of 45 different partners across the city in using the approach, who are using it to varying degrees and in their own ways, and are taking the elements that are interesting for them. And then we also have others that we work with more closely to kind of support them in using that approach and again kind of collecting those stories and making it their own. And they include partners like, I don't know if anyone from Elmore is here. No. Elmore are one of those partners who were part of the spoke earlier in the week as part of Marmalade. Also Leaf, Tony from the Lived Experience Advisory Forum, Active Oxfordshire and Oxford Hub. So these are some of the partners that we've worked with. And what we'd like to do over the next year is to continue to support people to use storytelling. So, these might be people who've already been trained in it, or they might be people who are interested in kind of being a part of it. And we're in a position where Lankelly Chase, who Gates had also referred to, also fund, help support this inquiry and the other inquiries, mean we can help to kind of, be support to that, where kind of needed to kind of provide some kind of subsidised costings around that. So we want people to experiment with us and use storytelling. But we also want, as part of that, for people to not just be using it, but also learning with us about this approach. Because, first and foremost, we're an arts centre and we do lots of different things, but we're not professional evaluators. And so we think there's a lot to be said for people just putting this into practice and coming together and figuring out what works, what doesn't, what are the opportunities in this, how can we involve it to be more kind of inclusive and to work for these different contexts. What are also its limitations, as things we already know aren't working or storytelling's less strong at doing, so what else sits around this? So really it's kind of an invitation to you, if you're somebody that is interested in storytelling, whether you've been using it already and want to come and learn with us about it, or would like to give it a go, that we hope over the next year we'll have the chance to kind of make space for those conversations and learn together about this approach and what can it do in helping to shift more meaningful approaches towards measurement in Oxford. So that's the storytelling, that's the first part. And Susie, do you want to just say a little bit about Signal, which is the other strand of experimentation that we're interested in?
So I'm working with about 5 organisations in East Oxford in OX4, in the OX4 postcode area of Oxford, and to do a project with Signal, which we heard about earlier, which is really about sort of understanding and experimenting with Signal as a tool to gather information about parental needs. So we're particularly looking at parents, and specifically parents with fairly young children, so early years group children, And we've got about 5 different organisations that all overlap in that they're all based in that area of Oxford, and they all have some focus on supporting people and families with these young children. And so I suppose it's the project is sort of works at multiple levels, and we're really interested in how Signal as a tool can support us to have conversations with people, and they can look at what their needs might be and have agency over those needs. And at a service level to understand better what those needs are, and to work collaboratively so that we understand better what those needs might be, and not just what the needs are, but also where people might want to engage with support, because it might not be things that stick out as, to other people as an obvious area of need, but it might be something that's slightly less obvious, but that those individuals would actually like to focus on. And then at sort of a more aggregate and strategic level to begin to give us a body of data that we know is absolutely based on what people are telling us their needs are themselves, and to better understand that, and hopefully to do that alongside the parents, and to hopefully, we haven't done this yet, this is all sort of our plans, we're quite early on in this project, but we are hoping that parents will join us in experimenting with this tool, and then join us in discussing what the learnings are and how we interpret those learnings, and what we can do with that, but effectively to retain that voice within the data, and make sure that we don't lose that. So what we're going to be doing is, and I don't know if it's been used a lot in this way before, but we're going to be using the Signal tool in groups, so probably quite small groups of parents, 4 or 5 parents, with the different agencies that we're working with, so Flows, and the rest of the Out School group, who now we're going to have to look up as I can. And running those groups over the next couple of months. And going through the tool and stopping to talk about how people feel about those needs and what kind of support and peer support particularly they can get. And I think that's another element of the project, is to try and understand and maximise the amount of support people can get from their peer networks, and whether using this kind of thing in a group setting can be a really constructive way of sort of tapping into those networks. So Beaver Dorset's Donington Doorstep, the hub obviously in the Impact Zone, and hopefully others that will join us as we go along. So I think that's the summary of the project, and as I say, we're sort of at planning stage at the moment, so there's a lot to learn. But anyone that's interested, do let me know.
So basically, our work at Leaf is about working closely with local services. We also work with both the Oxford City and County Council. As an independent group, our work is about speaking directly to the service user, the client, and to get a better picture on what they feel the value of services are. Are they meeting their individual needs? I emphasise the word individual because each person has their own individual needs, whether that could mean 3 months support, or it could mean year support, it could mean longer support. What we want to do and what we want to see changed is the services, rather than saying this is what we're going to do, we want to see a change where services saying what do our service users feel we need to do? What do they feel we need to cover? What do they feel we need to put in place? What do they feel the service should offer in regards to long-term stability in a person's life? The only way we can do that is speaking directly with the people that we are trying to help. One of the big things that we're doing at the moment is actually speaking directly to the people who are persistent homelessness, where basically if you pass them on the street and try to talk to them, they tell you to F off and get out of my face and all that lot. But it's about, okay, I can hear that, but it's about going back. It's about going back. It's about going back. Because one day they will turn and say, I'm glad you came back because I'm ready now to talk. We've got to remember a lot of people come from very traumatic, complicated, complex lives. And it's only these people that can really help us shape how services should look like. So with Leaf, it is about working with services to look at how we can change the way we deliver the outcomes, the successes, and what we're actually looking at. Because it's one thing saying, well, we've housed so many people. But it's another thing saying, well, hang on a minute, but out of those 50 people, how many were truly happy? How many people were happy with the accommodation, the area? How many people were actually happy with the length of support they're getting or the type of support? And until we start asking these questions, rather than saying, well, we've housed them, that's it. Housing doesn't mean anything if they end up back on the streets again. And that's what we're finding, that people are being housed, not getting the level of support that they require, or being housed with people who are taking drugs, alcohol, misusing, and they're not feeling safe, so they end up back on the streets again. So it's a revolving door, and what we need to be looking at is how can we stop this revolving door? How can we help people to maintain their tenancy? How can we help people maintain relationships? And the way that we're looking at now is called the trauma approach first. So if you've got somebody who's heavily addicted to drugs, there's a reason why they're taking drugs. And a lot of it is that they come from very complex, difficult backgrounds. And the drugs are there to help them cope. But services are saying, well, we can't help you unless you come off your drugs first. What we are working with and within services is the complex of treatment first. Let's look at how we can help these people cope with their complex past. Then deal with addiction afterwards. Then that way we can stop this continuous revolving door where people go to services, can't cope, end up back on the streets, losing a place in the hostel, and it's like more money being pumped into these people. Let's look at that. We've got a limited resources of funds. The government isn't helping with this because they only give tiny amounts of money. But let's look at what we can do to ensure that when we're helping people, we're meeting their needs in a way that stops that revolving door.